Hi everyone, this is Katie from KindredSoulArt, and I'm excited for today's project, which is this crazy chicken, Hei Hei, from Moana, or loosely based on Moana. And this idea came from Liz, so thanks Liz for the suggestion. We did this one together and it was super fun, so thought I'd share with everyone. I've made an outline of this for you, so you don't have to sketch it by hand or anything like that. You can actually download this. I'll put a link in the description below, so you can actually just print this off and trace it. So we'll do that together today. And the other stuff that you'll need for today, paintbrush. I'm using a size 6, and this is a white gel pen. This is Uniball Signo. It's my favorite one to use. It's not an endorsement or anything like that. I'm not getting paid for it, but this one is my favorite one to use, or they tend to be more reliable. If you don't have a white gel pen, you can also use just white paint, gouache, or you can use acrylic, especially since the white on here is just very small details. Acrylic will tend to pull up color. So usually you don't want to use it too much over watercolor, but in this case, it would probably be fine. Let's see what else. You'll need paper. So this was done on Arch's cold pressed paper, but today I'm actually going to be doing it on Arch's hot pressed paper, so you can kind of see the difference. And I also just love exploring different aspects to painting and exploring different ways to do things. So I almost rarely do the same painting twice, so I'll be making some modifications today, which you'll see. So you'll need some paper, a rag or paper towel. It's nice to have so you can daub off your paintbrush, your paints, of course. Let's see here. So I've got a very messy palette here. I've got my reds, oranges, yellows, green, blue, black, purple, red, and got my browns in here. So my palette is mostly M-gram watercolors, but use what you have. It's not terribly important, especially for, something fun like this. It's just gonna be for your enjoyment. And then of course some water to dip your brush in. And then the one modification I'm gonna make to them, I'm gonna go grab piece of it here. So the modification that I'm going to make today, instead of having this square size, I'm going to make it the full sheet, but I'm going to leave a little white space here underneath his feet so I can put in some words here. I'm going to say, "Oh, hey," because Hei Hei is his name. So that's the modification I'll make today using this paper. But if you want to use, if you like this more like old photograph style, you just square off the dimensions. So this is about 4.5 by 4.5. That's what size the outline is created for. It's the same size. And then you just leave extra space at the bottom. So you're welcome to do that if you want, or you can also follow along with the modification I'll be doing today, which is just leaving a little white space for some words, and I'll do that through using some washi tape. So you can also use gentle masking tape. If it's super sticky, just put it on your clothes a couple times to reduce the amount of stickiness so it doesn't rip the paper. Or you can also use painter's tape, which is also very common to use for those purposes. Okay, I think that covers everything. Oh, and the last thing, a piece of tissue or paper towel will also work. It's for blotting the clouds. So also tissue. So if you have all your stuff together, you can go ahead and keep going on this video. You're welcome to pause or fast forward or speed it up anytime you want. I'm going to be doing this in real time, so we can do it together if you want. But at any time, if you want to take a break, pause, whatever, feel free to do so. Okay, I'm going to start with outlining this. Now I have a light box, which is basically, just a bright light. So you can see, let's see if you can see this. Yeah. So you can see the outline behind using this light box is what it's called. But if you don't have one, that's okay. You can use a window. You can put a flashlight underneath like a glass baking dish. You can use some transfer paper if you want. The carbon paper, I mean, where you put it behind the figure and trace it on that way. So today I'm going to be using the light box because it's pretty easy to use. So I'm going to place it about right there. Seems good to me. And I'm just going to go ahead and get started tracing here. And it doesn't have to be perfect, and especially with one like this where it's just kind of goofy. You definitely don't need to have any perfection in this. I think I've got just about everything here. Yep, that will just about do. Okay. Oh, missed his other eyeball. That's right. I'll just put that one in. Okay. So if you want to do the modification with me today, I'm just going to put the washi tape under the feet. I'm ripping this so that the edges are a little bit more interesting. So, and because my washi tape is a little bit short here, I'm just going to shorten the feet a little bit, the edges. Okay, so you can pretty much do this in any order you want, but I suggest a couple things so that it'll make it a little bit easier to paint. So you'll probably want to do at least the gray in the eyes and the blue in the back before you do the red, because red will tend to seep into those lighter colors. So you can kind of see on this one, I had to go back and add some more gray on this, and it pulled some of that red, which is fine. But it'll be a little bit easier just to start with the gray first and do the red after that. And same thing with doing the blue turquoise down here before the yellow, because the lighter yellowish color will tend to pull some of that darker blue. So just being aware of that. Again, you can do this in any order you want, but I suggest holding off on the red and the darker blue until you've done those other couple pieces. So we're actually going to start with the background first. Let me draw in just a nice little horizon line here. Doesn't have to be perfect. There we go. Okay. So I'm gonna grab my paintbrush And I'm going to use a light blue for this sky. And I'm going to get it wet first. It's called wet and wet technique. I found that the cold press, or sorry, the hot press will tend to take a lot more water to spread things out. So I'm just going to start with this side. And I'm going to add some of my blue. The nice thing about doing this lighter blue background first is you don't have to be as careful about the lines, since those will be a darker color. So hot press paper has a lot more texture to it, and it makes it a little bit more difficult to get straight lines. So if you're kind of a perfectionist and really want every little nook and cranny perfect and straight, the cold press might be a little bit easier for you. But the hot press has, it does tend to spread more easily. And I'm just going in with some extra paint to create some texture and kind of different colors through the sky. Make sure everything filled in. Okay, now I'm going to use my tissue. And I'm just going to ball it up a little bit and press it. It creates these cloud-like textures. Okay, and then I'm gonna go back with just a little bit more water and paint. So you can see on this one I had some of the ruffled edges that show through. This was through like a second layer of paint that I put on. It's maybe a little bit dark, so I'm going to lift some of that color. And the last final bit that you can do to create some texture is to just drop in some water. Just gonna do a couple little water drops. That you can see the areas forming, hopefully. Okay, now I'm going to do this bottom ocean part, and I'm going to use a little bit more purplish color for my ocean, like a darker blue. Let's see, I'm going to pull in just a little bit of purple. Up. I'm going to pull some of the color I used from the sky to keep it kind of consistent through the painting. And this is a phthalo blue I'm pulling. You'll notice I have a lot of blues. It's my favorite color. And so I love exploring paintings with blue. Okay, I'm adding some indigo. Perfect. So I'm looking for this kind of darker blue that I can use for the ocean. And at first you'll want to be careful with this edge because this is probably still wet for you as it is for me. And so just leave a little bit of white space there. You'll come back in and add some details there. That was maybe a little dark, so I'm just going to pull down. think I'm gonna add just a little bit of a lighter kind of greenish aqua color towards the middle center. Okay. Yeah, for this bottom part, you try and keep the brush strokes mostly side to side once you get in a good spot. So you can see as I'm now going side to side, it's lifting up some of the paint and creating some wave textures. Okay, so now I'm gonna go back and we're gonna start on the eyeballs. And so for the eyeballs, even though eyeballs are white, there's still a shadowing and curvature to the eyeballs, and eyes aren't purely white. And so adding some gray tint, grayish bluish tint around the edges will help give it some form. So I'm going to use Payne's Gray. And I'll put a little bit of phthalo blue, phthalo-ish blue. You can see my palette, because it's so messy, I often find just little colors that I need along the way. So it doesn't have to be exact. And I think it makes it more interesting when it's not. You get a lot more interesting color variation, and sometimes just the right color you're looking for would be really difficult to recreate. Okay, so I'm gonna go around the edges here with this kind of gray, and these brush strokes you're gonna want to keep more circular. And again, if your blue here isn't fully dry, just be careful when you get to those edges, because it'll want to bleed. Mine was a little bit dark, so I'm just pulling up some paint. And it's gonna look real weird at first. It's gonna look super, super weird. So don't worry if yours is that way, it'll get better. Now moving on to the other eye. You especially want a little bit more shadow towards the lids, like on the bottom and on the top. So you're gonna have a little bit more shadow there. Okay, got my super weird eyeball background in. And now we are going to go to the yellow. Make sure you can tell if your paint is dry by gently placing your hand on it. If it's cold, it's still a little bit wet. So mine's a little bit wet, but I'm gonna be a little bit more careful around the edges. If yours is still wet, more wet, you can use a hair dryer and just blow dry real quick, pause the video, and when you're ready, play again. So I'm just going to do yellow over the whole area, and later I'm going to add in more of the shadows. Same thing, be really careful on the feet because it'll be very easy to bleed. But if it does, that's perfectly fine. No painting has to be perfect. In fact, if it's too perfect, sometimes it's hard to tell it's a painting. And so I think it gives it a lot of character, and I think it's kind of fun when things aren't exactly perfect. Okay, I'm gonna add some dark yellow and brown to the edges below the knees, by the feet. And this is a darker kind of yellowish golden brown I'm adding just to the edges while it's still wet, so it'll spread. If yours isn't spreading, that's totally fine, because then you can just do another layer on top. And now I am just lifting a little bit of paint from the beak. And a little bit from the neck. So I'm just using clean water on the brush. The brush is a little bit damp. I press down, lift up, and it lifts up a little bit of paint for me. This can give you some more natural highlights in your painting. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the, let's see. It's a little bit wet. So let's go to the red. And again, just be careful on the edges. If your paint is still wet, then use a blow dryer to help blow dry it. And you can pause this video if you'd like. I'm just gonna go ahead and paint, but I'm gonna be careful about the edges. And if it bleeds a little bit, I'm not too worried about that. So I'm mixing up some red. This is let's see the name of it. It's a Permanent Alizarin Crimson. That's what I'm using here. Added a little bit of purple and just a touch of black to darken it up a little bit, but I'll be mostly pulling from that spectrum. And while this is still wet, I'm gonna lift some of the paint, pressing down with the brush, the slightly damp brush. Pull some of it up for a little highlight. And then around the edges, I'm going to use just a little bit darker, so some purple and black. I know I'm going a little bit fast today, but I thought even if it's a little bit fast, you can pause the video. And then I'm blending out the little bit of dark that I added around the edges. Okay, now I'm going to paint the eyelids using the same principle. So using the red, and just a little bit of dark on the edge. And I'm gonna lift some of the color and darken the edges. Here I go lifting. I'm lifting around the bulgy part of the eyelids. That's where I'm going to get more of the contour. So you're doing it in more of the center area. And then using that a little bit of darker purple or just tiny bit of black to darken some of the edges. I like them already. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna do this little comb thing. I'm not sure what this is called. If anyone knows what this little nose floppy thingy is called on a chicken, put it in the comments. I need to look that up. I don't know what that is. But we're gonna do the nose floppy thingy. And similar to the other areas, gonna lift paint around the top. And down the nose hangy thingy. And then darken the edges. And now I'm going to go down to the body, and I'm going to do this tealish blue color. So I'm going to use mostly this aqua green. I love this color. I recently ordered it because I love exploring, especially blue colors. Let me see what brand it is for you, in case you'd like it. So this is a Winsor & Newton aqua green is the color. And I'm not getting any endorsements for it, but I do love this color. But I do love like blues and teals and stuff, so. And then after you load your brush, something that I like doing when I load my paint is after I load my brush, I like to dip the tip in a couple other little paints that are just darker than the one I'm using. It helps me to get some of the edges. So you'll see the tip of my paintbrush is a little bit darker, so I can start ahead of time on getting that darker edge. But if it's a little bit uncomfortable for you, or it's you're just starting out, don't worry about trying to get fancy with dipping the tip of your brush in different paints and stuff. Just have fun and use one color at a time, and you can layer the colors instead of doing it in one layer. I'm going to lift in the center because the body is rounded, so you're going to get kind of a rounded highlight here on the belly. And I'm going to add a little bit darker on the edges right now. So I'm going to use some indigo color here, and then just a little bit of purple. And you're going to be doing some shadowing underneath these feathers here. So you can do some of the darker colors there. And I'm going to do the feathers with the same process. Lifting color. And adding some darker edges. darker color for the edges. This bottom one I'm going to do a little bit darker than the other ones because it is the bottom feather down here, so you're going to get a little bit more shadow down there. Onto the legs. We're going to go back in the in another layer to add some details and more shadowing here. So your shadows don't have to be perfect or anything. As while it's wet, it's nice to have the nice gradual change that you get with watercolor. Okay, I'm looking at my painting here, and I think I'm going to come back to the eyes. So mine are a little bit lighter, and I'm going to add some more shadow around. Be careful when you get close to the red because it will bleed a little bit more, so just try and use more gentle strokes by the edge while we're waiting for this other piece to dry. So we're adding shadowing underneath the eyelid. And around the edge of the eye. And the same on the other eye. Looking a little bit better. And I'm going to add some shadowing on the yellow part. So I'm going to use a little bit more of orange, dark yellow, brown to get more of the contrast. I'm going to go underneath the beak because that's where there's going to be more shadow. And underneath the chin. Start with those areas. So when I'm coming back in to spread it out, this is again more of a like damp brush that's clean. I don't have any paint when I'm coming back in to spread it out. That helps with making it more smooth and get a better gradient that way than just going straight in with paint every time. I'm gonna come back to the edges of these feathers here. I'm coming a little bit higher with the paint strokes. And then I'm going to add some extra texture lines for feathers. And I'm making the edges a little bit darker. And we'll come back to the beak in just a second. Try and give this little bit some time to dry. So I'm going to come down to the legs. And here's where you can put in that line between the feet. We're shadowing on the toes. Coming back in with a clean brush. I want to curve this line just a little bit with the shadows, the line that's between the legs. I want to curve on the bottom to give some more rounded form there on the bottom. Coming back up to my beak. Gonna add shadows underneath the nose hangy thingy that's up here. But not as dark as behind it, because the beak is in front of the underneath bit behind it. So this is going to be lighter than back here. Then I'm just rounding some of the shading on the edge, because the beak is rounded, so it's going to have a brighter spot on the front and then a little bit more shading around the sides. Still a little bit wet, but I think it'll be dry enough for details on the body now. So if yours is still wet, again, feel free to pause and get a hair dryer and dry it up. So you can come back to it when it's more dry. It's easier to work with a little bit. I'm gonna use more of my aqua green and some other blues. Getting a little bit darker color. I handmade some business cards the other day with gold and aqua. You might be able to see it. There's still some gold residuals in here. So some of my painting has sparkles in it, which is kind of fun. So I'm shading underneath this, the yellow bits. Then I'm going to pull some of the shading more on one side of his body here. And then using a clean, damp brush to fade it out. I'm here just giving some character to these leaves, and I'm giving some feather strokes here. And down to my last one. Darkening up those edges and adding in some little floofs here and there for detail. I added a couple little floofs on the body too for some feathers. My big body is about done. So a couple little floofs on there for the feathers. Take a look here. So when you're painting a figure, one thing that's helpful is to once in a while step back a little bit or blur your eyes to see what the figure looks like from farther away. See if there's any spots that are standing out as too light or too dark. So like this needs to be a little bit darker for mine. But your painting is going to be a little bit different, just depending on, you know, what you've painted and where you've painted things. And it's okay to make modifications based on what's there. With watercolor, there's a lot less control that you have over the paint, so it kind of takes you on a little journey with it. And I think that's one of the both frustrating and exciting things about watercolor is it forces a lot of creativity with the mistakes and not having all the control that you might want over paint. And the key is just to embrace it and work with it as best as you can. Okay, so I'm gonna add a little bit more shadow on his head, and some of those more shadowy spots. So I'm getting some, this is just some Payne's Gray. Adding some shadow on the eyelid here. And behind the eyebrows. The edge of the comb, by the nose. Eyelids. Nose hingy thingy. And this got a little bit more gray, so I'm going to add a little bit more red to the nose hingy thingy. And same thing over here. Ended up getting a little too purple gray towards the edge, so I'm going to add a little bit more of the red. Make sure I have my color in there. So adding a second layer of the color is going to give you a little bit more vibrant colors, if you like that. Okay, I'm going to add little eyeballs. You can use a art pen, if you like, to make it easier for you, or you can use paint. I'm going to use paint today, because that's what I've got with me. But of course, you're welcome to use what you have. So I'm making an eyeball down here. And then the other eyeball up here. Nice thing about these is they don't necessarily have to be even because of the nature of the painting. That's more forgiving. Okay, we are down to the last step. So now I'm just gonna add some little white accents, these little white dots and some little highlights here and there just to give it a little bit more contrast and character. You can get, I almost forgot the details on the ocean. So let me do this background first, add some ocean lines to it, and then we'll do the white. So yeah, the white will add a little bit more details, but it's easier if there's already details on the ocean. So I'm gonna add some darker indigo waves here. I'm just going back and forth with different strengths of paint on my brush. So back here, I'm doing a little bit darker and then a little bit lighter towards the front. or I guess the bottom of the piece. And even just a little bit darker up here, I added a little bit of black just to the edge here. All right, now for the white. I'm gonna add some dots up here. Something that is really helpful with dots is you can make bigger ones that then go smaller, or in threes or odd numbers is often helpful. I'm gonna highlight on his nose. A little bit of a highlight on the eyes. And a round dot on the actual eye part. It'll help bring it out. Add little feather shapes with your white pen. Okay, almost done. Then add some of those same white highlights on your ocean background. I'm going to take my washi tape off. Nice. I like how that came out with the washi tape. And just for kicks, I'm actually going to add a little bit of a shadow behind this box. I think it'll make it stand out more. So I'm getting some of the Payne's gray. And just adding around the edge. Below the feet. And normally I'd wait to let this dry, but speed things up a little bit today. I'm just gonna dry this a little bit lighter, and I'm gonna go ahead and write on it right away. So I'm gonna just dry this real quick. Be dry enough. I'm gonna find my pen here. And you can write whatever you want in yours. I'm gonna write "Oh Hey." This is the character's name in Moana, which is why it's spelled that way. Oh, hey. So that is it. You have your crazy chicken. So you can see the modifications that I made today. I used washi tape to make a little label here. And you can see the differences in hot press and cold press. So this is the hot press, this is the cold press. It's a lot easier to get smooth edges in the cold press, but the hot press has interesting texture on it, and you can get different kinds of spread with the paint. So I hope you enjoyed today. If you are interested in other tutorials, please let me know what kind of things you are interested in seeing. I love the ideas that you guys have, and I am happy to paint with you anytime. So go ahead and give me a follow, subscribe on YouTube, and you can find me on Instagram as well at kindred.soul.art. And that is about it. If you love what I do, you can also go down into the comments below, or the description below, and I have my Venmo Cashapp there if you want to buy me a coffee. And that is it for today. I hope you guys have such a fun weekend, and I would love to see whatever you guys do with this project, whatever modifications you make. So that is it. This is Katie, and signing off.